Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. While conference tournament season's raging on in college basketball, there's been a lot of coaches that have been fired, and most of them have not been a shock because a lot of them were really struggling. But Mike Anderson, the St. John's coach, has been fired as well. I'm a little bit more shocked about this one, even though he did struggle as the St. John's head coach. But he'd only been there for 4 seasons, and it's not like the Red Storm were bad. It's just that they weren't very good either. And I guess looking at all of it kind of makes sense why they fired him. But I'm going to go over everything that happened with the firing of Mike Anderson and what it means for the future of St. John's basketball and a potential candidate to be the next head coach of St. John's. Now, Mike Anderson, he's had a long career as a head coach in college basketball. As you can see on screen right here, when he was at UAB and Arkansas, he had a lot of success and he's made tons of NCAA tournaments. But even at Arkansas, things started to go downhill toward the end of his tenure, and he got fired when Arkansas lost in the NIT back in 2018-2019. And then after that, St. John's hired Mike Anderson after they fired Chris Mullins. And if you look at Mike Anderson's record in the 4 seasons that he was the head coach of St. John's, it's wildly consistent, but it's not good enough to get into the NCAA tournament, not one single season. He was 17-15 in his first season in St. John's, 16-11 in his second, 17-15 in his third, and 18-15 this past season. And that is just not good enough to keep your job at a program like St. John's, even though the Red Storm have not been as good of a program as they were back in the 80s and 90s in the Big East heyday. St. John's is still a program that has a big culture of winning, and they want to win basketball games. And that record for Mike Anderson, it is not horrible. You're going over 500 every single season, but you're not making the NCAA tournament. If he had made at least 1 or 2 NCAA tournaments in his first 4 seasons, he'd still be there. And if he had done worse, he probably would have been fired last year. But he was doing just enough to get by, and that is just not good enough for St. John's. And I think a big reason why they just fired Mike Anderson is because of the potential fact that Rick Pitino is a potential candidate to be the next head coach of St. John's. Now, obviously, just so early, Mike Anderson has just been fired, and we have no idea if Rick Pitino wants to go back to the Power 6 level. He could be satisfied at Iona and not want to move back up to have to deal with more pressure and stress of being at a bigger job like St. John's, but you never know, and I think this is a big reason why St. John's moved on from Mike Anderson, because they're tired of mediocrity. They don't want to be a bad program, and Mike Anderson wasn't giving them that, but they weren't also doing that great either. And if Rick Pitino could be your next head coach, then I definitely see why St. John's fired Mike Anderson. Now, it is possible that Rick Pitino turns the job down and St. John's is going to have to hire somebody else, but at the end of the day, Mike Anderson, even though he's a great head coach in my mind, I think he's one of the better head coaches in college basketball. He just did not have success at St. John's, and he might have been able to turn it around, but this past offseason, he brought in Andre Curbelo, and that was a big addition to the program, and he also had some other players that came in through the transfer portal, so they probably should have done a better job than this. And the year before that, they had Julian Champagnie, and they had a lot of good players throughout his 4-year coaching career. And again, St. John's could not get over the hump, and that's been a big problem for a lot of these programs that have fired their coaches recently. It's just been mediocrity to poor play, and when you're a program like St. John's, the longer that you're mediocre, the harder it takes to get yourself back on top in college basketball, especially now that the Big East is getting really good again, with programs like Marquette and UConn and Providence playing much better basketball with their head coaches, that even Villanova's slipped down now that Jay Wright's gone, but they could get back on track maybe in the future. So St. John's wants to get out of the bottom of the Big East, and St. John's has shown that they will do anything to get back on top in the Big East, and firing Mike Anderson's a big part in that because they just don't want any more mediocrity. And if Rick Pitino could be the next head coach of St. John's, that would be huge. Again, it's so early to tell since Mike Anderson's just been fired. We have no idea if Rick Pitino is going to take the job, but the potential to get a coach like Rick Pitino or another high-level head coach, potentially Mike Bray or someone else, to be able to be the next head coach of St. John's is definitely a reason why St. John's fired Mike Anderson, because you look at a lot of these other head coaching jobs that are open right now, like Georgia Tech and California, they have no leverage. They're not going to be able to get a coach like Rick Pitino to want to coach at their program. Even Georgetown, even though they have a lot of history, it's going to be really hard unless they can really sell the fact that they used to be a brand and they can bring in a head coach like that. So you never know. It's possible that Georgetown could get a good head coach, but a lot of these other coaching jobs that are open, they're just not high-profile jobs. St. John's has that to sell. They can say, we used to be a brand in the Big East. We want to get back on track. And Mike Anderson just wasn't getting it done. So even though I'm a big fan of Mike Anderson, I hope he can get back on his feet and get another head coaching job. I do agree that it was the right decision for St. John's to fire Mike Anderson in this changing world of college basketball and with all the stuff going on with NIL and everything that goes with that. And it's so tough to bring in talent, especially when you're in the Big East with so many many other great programs. St. John's doesn't want to be mediocre anymore, and firing Mike Anderson is the right decision to make, even though it does hurt to see a guy like Mike Anderson, who's had so much success, get fired. But if St. John's can get Rick Pitino or get another high-profile head coach, then I definitely agree that they made the right decision to fire Mike Anderson. But if they're not able to land Rick Pitino, Mike Bray, or some other high-profile head coach, then even though St. John's did make the right decision to fire Mike Anderson, St. John's will continue to be mediocre in the future. So hopefully it works out for Mike Anderson to get a new head coaching job, and hopefully St. John's can land one of these high-profile head coaches, especially Rick Pitino, to be able to turn the Red Storm around and make them a great basketball program like they used to be. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about St. John's firing Mike Anderson, and whether you think they made the right decision, and what you think about Rick Pitino potentially being the next head coach of St. John's, or whether you think another candidate will be the next head coach of St. John's. Follow me on Twitter as well, and I'll see you next time.